Pickleball Diaries presents Cling on the Court with your host, Lily Brown. Let's go!
Hi everyone, welcome back to Cling on the Court. Let's cracking the pickleball code. Jeff, welcome to back with us again. And let's crack cracking the code of the footwork fundamentals again. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back and excited to talk about part two or take on part two of Footwork Fundamentals.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that too, because that's is that the winning secret? Be ready. And our goal is from the baseline to the kitchen. I think that's what we were gonna talk about in the real game scenario. Can Coach Jeff help us to kind of decoding and how can we be ready, the footwork, how do we use proper footwork, and then your anticipation skill and ready from the baseline to occupy the kitchen.
Yeah. So I think, so if we're talking about if you're the serving team and you've just hit a serve, the return comes back and you're going to attempt some sort of third shot, the way you move forward after that third shot depends on the type of third shot you hit. So there's you and there's also your partner. So you need to consider the movement of both players when we're talking about a third shot. But if we're talking about a third shot drop, generally you're going to attempt that drop and you're going to glide forward, both players, the person hitting the drop and the server's partner. You're going to glide forward with some form of what resembles like running steps because your hips are going to be facing forward and you're generally moving in a reasonably straight line. You might be going slightly left to right, depending on where the third shot was sent. But how far forward you go depends on the quality of the third shot. So if you start to move forward and realize the third shot drop is high, you're going to stop, make sure you get balance with your paddle ready before the opponents strike the ball or are about to strike the ball. And if the third shot drop is really effective because it's low and making the opponents hit up from below the net, you might start to move forward with more acceleration or more speed so that you can get further forward to get into an optimal position. Excuse me, to get into an optimal position to capitalize on a pop-up, or if they hit a soft drop because your third shot drop is really effective, you need to get forward quickly in case they hit it short. So the way you move is sort of the same. You're moving forward in a straight line. So you're some version of like walking or running steps. And then how far forward you go depends on the quality or effectiveness of the drop. If we're talking about a drive, if you are the server's partner and you see that your partner is about to attempt a drive, so you see the way that they prepare, it looks like they're going to accelerate and increase the speed of the ball by driving it. You have to be really alert and maybe close in a little bit faster, but you also have to be really careful to watch the height of the drive and how well it was struck in terms of height. Because if the drive is a little bit high and they can smack it back at you, you're not going to have a lot of time. So you got to slow down quickly and decelerate, get balance with your paddle ready, and get ready to counter or defend. If the drive's really effective, you might close in with a couple of really fast steps. And maybe you'll do something like a split step around three-quarter court or somewhere around three-quarter court, getting ready to either counter or take over and poach or capitalize on any pop-ups that occur off of that drive. So that's a scenario where, yeah, your footwork, the way you move isn't that complex. It's more about like judging how much do you move and at what speed, which depends on the shot that you're sending.
Yeah, so if we do a little bit recap of what you mentioned the last time, the the circle of the footwork, it starts from perception, anticipation, and then decision, execution, and the recovery.
Yeah.
So that's what we need to constantly thinking, like our footwork should be based on the whole circle. With that, and I think recovery is a huge thing. Often we are not pay attention about like how do we, after we execute the shot, and how do we recover to the proper position with our feet at different place on the court. Can you give us some example about that?
Yeah, so just like the recovery is so important because every shot that we talked about the shot movement cycle or the stroke movement cycle in a previous episode. And the parts of that cycle are read. So you have to read the oncoming ball, react, respond. So that's your decision and the actual execution of the shot. Then you have to recover. And so we need to, like, we go through that cycle really quickly on every single shot that's occurring during a point. So basically training the recovery is something that we need to focus on. So again, if you're training with a partner or a ball machine, sometimes you watch players train in that way and they're getting a high level of repetition on a particular shot, but maybe the movement to the ball and the movement after the shot with the recovery isn't that present. And that's fine because you need to groove or train a specific shot, but at some point you need to open up the training and incorporate more realistic elements. So adding a recovery if you're training with a ball machine, or adding a recovery if you're training with a partner. And maybe you open it up by doing more point play or some sort of modified game that is going to force you to work on that particular shot that you're working on, but also to make sure that you have the fundamental habit of recovering after the shot. Because again, if you don't add those things into your training, they won't be habits during a game. So it's not like we want to be constantly thinking about, oh, I need to read, react, respond, recover. We don't have time to think consciously of these things. These are things that are happening, but we have to train these types of skills and develop these types of skills by training with some degree of realism in our training, or else, again, skills don't transfer into a game if they're trained solely in isolation. The skill transfer won't be very great. So at some point you have to transfer those skills into some sort of game setting that's more realistic, or modified game setting that's realistic.
Yeah, that's great. Exactly. That's why we often find we're so great when we have the ball feeding to us.
Yeah.
And then we can hit such a great return. But when the scenario change, it doesn't transfer back into the game. And especially with recovery. And could you give us some example how we can train that? Like, what do you mean exactly by recovery?
Yeah, so recovery is it's sort of similar to reception skills when you're receiving a ball. After you send a particular shot, you need to go somewhere or be somewhere that you think is the optimal position for the likely responses from your opponents, right? So I guess a really easy example is after you return a serve, the optimal recovery position most of the time is to get forward to the non-volley zone as quickly as you can, so that when the serving team hits their third shot, you're in a position to take away space and time. So that's an example where if you don't recover and don't move forward after the return, the serving team has an easier time executing a third because you're not as far up, so they have more space to hit to. And even if they hit it right to you and you make a great shot, if you're hitting it from farther back behind the non-volley zone, you're not going to be much of a threat. So there's a simple example of recovering after the return. That's why we would say return and run, get to the non-volley zone to take away space and take away time, which makes life tougher for the serving team. So then a recovery for the serving team might be, I see this all the time, even at a high level. So people serve and their momentum carries them slightly inside the baseline. And then the return comes deep and they have to backpedal really quickly and they're off balance. So not only do they not make a great third shot because they didn't recover after the serve, they ended up too far inside the court. The return comes deep and now they're backpedaling. So it affects the quality of their third shot. So they're probably going to be less consistent or less effective. But also, even if they hit a good third shot, but they were backpedaling as a result of their poor recovery, now getting to the non-volley zone after that third shot may be more difficult because their momentum was carrying them back as they hit their third shot. And now it's harder for them to get forward. So that's a common common challenge for like beginners or intermediate players that are a little newer to the sport, making sure you serve and then recover a little bit behind the baseline so you can manage deep returns if they come. So those are two really basic examples of recovery. But then we could talk about when you're at the non-volley zone or at the kitchen, if all four players are up there dinking, after you dink, if you get pulled wide, you need to get out there, execute an effective dink of some sort. You might send it cross court, you might send it to the middle, you may choose to dink straight ahead. You need to recover really quickly to an appropriate spot with your body and paddle ready before your opponents strike the next ball so that you can be in an optimal position to receive whatever they send back at you. And if you don't have those recovery habits, you may get exposed. So if you are still in recovery mode as they hit their next shot, you might have trouble changing directions and getting set up for your next shot. Or if you recover in the wrong spot, you may leave space open for your opponents to hit to. Or if you recover slowly and you popped your dink up in the air and they have a chance to attack, if you're too slow to recover, you're going to be less ready to make a counter when they speed the ball up out of the air. So anyways, all that to say, recovery it's about going to where you think is the right spot, or the optimal spot to be ready for the next shot and to be there on time. What is on time? In this case, recovery, we measure our recovery being on time by being in position just before the opponents make contact. So if you're still moving and recovering as they strike the ball, you're not optimally prepared to react to the next shot. Because you're still in motion, which may make it hard to go certain directions or be sort of settled and balanced where you can get ready to move. So you want to be in your position with your recovery and with your body and your paddle before the ball arrives on the paddle of your opponents. And if you do that, there's a good chance you'll be much more ready for the next oncoming ball.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think, like, from my understanding, what you're saying of the recovery, and it's right connected to the next shot's anticipation of being ready, because you are recovery. The definition of recovery actually is to recover the ready and recover to being in the ideal prepared stage for the oncoming shot. Is that right?
Yeah. As you're recovering, you're actually reading the ball that you or your partner sent. So your recovery is based on where you sent the ball and the quality at which you sent that ball, right? Because the quality of your shot or the location of where you sent the shot highly or heavily influences where you go, right? So for instance, if we take the third shot drop scenario, if you hit a third shot drop and it's high above the net, you're not going to run straight into the non-volley zone because they're going to attack it right at you and you'll have very little time to react. So you have to read the shot and then make a decision to recover further back because you sent your third shot drop too high. So you need more time to defend. When you're on defense, generally, if you can give yourself more time to react, you can play better defense. Now, if the third shot is low and effective and it forces the opponents to hit up, you want to read that you've sent that low ball, quickly move forward to take away space and time to put pressure on the other team. And they'll feel your presence up there and it may cause them to pop the ball up. And if they do, because you recovered in an appropriate position, you'll be able to capitalize on the next ball if they do put it above the net. So your recovery is a combination of like physical movement and the idea of just being ready in a general sense with your sort of body and paddle, but it's also uses your perception or your ability to perceive and read the quality of the ball that you or your partner just sent and to move into the appropriate spot based on the ball that was sent. So recovery is a combination of the physical effort, but also the positioning aspect based on your perception and your ability to read your own shot.
Yeah. So just like you said, we should train ourselves in the drilling section, even just like reading how good like your own shot is, rather
Yeah,
than just watching on side. But you should know once the ball leaving the paddle, probably you have some kind of idea how good the quality of the shot is, right?
exactly. Yeah. Practice reading the quality of your shot. and try to link some sort of recovery that's based on the quality of that shot. And that way, when you get into a game situation, that recovery skill, so the idea of recovering quickly, but also where to recover, those skills will be there if you've trained them. And that's why it's important, again, to train skills. It's okay to train them statically for a bit to develop and groove, or some people just call it like muscle memory, to develop that muscle memory. But in order for that to transfer well into point play, you need to open it up and put it into more realistic settings that involve movement to execute the shot, and then the recovery after the shot. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and one big part of the footwork is the split steps.
Mhm.
And I would like to have you to explain the split steps more, and how do we use the split steps into the being ready and then the recovery. And do you mind to just shed some lights on that?
Yeah, the split steps, it's really important. So first of all, I'll talk about what the split step is. Some people may not know, but a split step is just basically when your opponents are about to strike the ball. When you do a split step, you're basically doing like a small hop where you sort of just come off the ground a little bit with your feet, and you time it so that you land just after the ball has left your opponent's paddle. So when you see the ball leave the paddle just after, if you've timed your split step well, you'll then hit the ground from your little bunny hop, and that hitting the ground allows you to push and drive into the ground to move left or right, or even forward or backwards. So a split step is a way to improve your initial first step, or to improve your ability to move quickly out of your first step. So when you react to an oncoming ball, a split step really helps you get a strong first step so that you can move faster. And if we can move faster and earlier, that maximizes the chance of being in good position and having good setup to the ball. The other thing with a split step, why it's really important and beneficial, is if I say to you, Lily, if you were like a student of mine, and I say, okay, Lily, I want you to split step when I make contact on this drive. Let's say I'm driving from the baseline and you're at the net. If you value a split step or make it a habit, you only know when to time your split step if you're watching the ball arrive on your opponent's paddle, so that you know, okay, this is the time I'm going to do my little mini jump. And you have to time it so that you hit the ground just after the ball has left your opponent's paddle. So by valuing or raising your awareness that a split step is important, it forces you to watch the ball arrive on your opponent's paddle. And if you focus on the ball arriving on your opponent's paddle, what do you think is going to happen to your anticipation skills?
Yeah.
They're going to improve, right?
Exactly.
So if people that have habitual, well-timed split step usually have great anticipation skills, because they're forced to watch the ball arrive on the opponent's paddle to time the split step. So they improve their ability to read the ball quickly off the paddle, but then they also improve their ability to react physically, because the split step it's a physical tool that helps you hit the ground and push and get set up for the next ball. I don't want to get too technical, but like there's a concept or a principle called the idea of opposite force. So if I want to move to my left, I actually have to push with my right leg. I have to push against the ground with my right leg, and that propels me to my left. If I want to move to my right, when I land from my split step, I push with my left leg, and that drives me over to my right. So anyways, a split step improves anticipation because it forces you to watch the ball to know when to time your split step. And then the physical act of landing on the ground with an athletic stance, if it's well timed, allows you to get a really good push against the ground to propel your body in a given direction to get set up for the ball that you're receiving. So I would advise like people to go on YouTube, find a clip of I actually have a clip, and I used it for one of our episodes, of Rachel Rohrbacher and Anna Bright. And I think they're playing Catherine Parenteau and Annalie Waters. If you slow the video down to 0.25 of the regular speed or half speed, and just watch each player when they're not hitting the ball. So watch them when their opponents are hitting the ball, and you'll see those four players split step on almost every single shot. And in particular, Rachel and Anna do it really noticeably. And then you also see Annalie split step on every shot. Annalie is, I think she's got to be the best mover on the pro tour, especially when you watch her play singles. She split steps every shot, and that allows her to propel and accelerate quickly out of the gate to get set up for each ball, where she can then capitalize on that great setup by doing what she wants with the ball. So, anyways, that was a long description of the split step, but it's hopefully I described what it is and why it's so important.
Yeah, I think we will, for the audience and listeners there, we will have the Jeff's videos link in the description of this episode. So anybody want to look at that specific video, please click the link and then you can see the reference. And then one question here, I actually have three. And then the next one is, so do you split step when, so you split step, doesn't matter if the ball coming towards you or coming towards your partner. Like you just kind of cultivating the habit, like just watch whoever gets the ball and split step every time. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, because when you're waiting for the opponent to send a ball over to your side of the court, you don't know where they're sending it, right?
Yeah.
Until it actually happens. You don't, they could be sending it in your direction. They could be sending it to your partner. They could send it up the middle. And if they're a good player or advanced player, they actually may disguise where they're sending the ball intentionally. So they make it look like they're going to hit one way, and then maybe they like flip the paddle or flip their wrist to redirect the ball quickly at the last second. So this is why you should, if you can, try to employ a split step on most shots. So I've just said all that, but if you also watch some other pros, there are some pros out there that split step either less noticeably, so they don't quite jump up in the air. They just sort of do like a little I call it unweighting. They just sort of rise up and then hit the ground on their balls of their feet. They don't actually come off the ground in the air. And then there's also some scenarios where you'll see some pros don't split step. So an example of that could be um, if all four players are at the kitchen, some of the pros, if they can see that their opponent is for sure going to hit a soft dink, they may not split step because they've read that there's not a requirement to split because they don't need to move super quickly. Okay. So it's somewhat dependent on the player, like a little split step or the idea of having like a little bit of an unweighting and then moving as your opponent strikes the ball. It's a really great idea and useful tool, but you will see in some situations, there are some players that don't split step every time. And that's usually because they know the ball is going to come really slow, or they know the ball's not going to come to them because they have such good anticipation skills. Same with return of serve. If you watch some of the pros, I've slowed a lot of video down to watch what they're doing when they return because it's a long distance between the server and the returner. If you're playing someone who doesn't have a particularly fast serve, there may be less need to have a noticeable split step because you have lots of time to react and move. But if you're playing someone who serves really aggressively, a split step might be really beneficial because your reaction needs to be much faster. So, anyways, I would suggest to the listeners and viewers, go watch some pro pickleball points, slow the play down, and watch the players that are not hitting the ball and watch what they do when the opponents are making contact. And you'll notice in most cases there is a split step. And Anna Bright and Rachel Rohrbacher, there's some great clips of them. They're split stepping in unison, like they go up in the air and they land at the same time on almost every shot. And I mean, they're two of the best players in the world. So, it's helping them read, react, and move into position. They play an aggressive style, and also they're playing against players that play aggressively. So that splits up helps them react quickly, move into position, and then hopefully do some damage and put some pressure on their opponents.
Yeah. So you just inspired me. I was just thinking about a split step drill you can do by yourself. And it might be silly. So I'm gonna share what's in myself. Correct me if you think it's too silly. So if I want to train just by myself, the split step, I can just watch a video, the real game, and pretend I'm on the other side and then just split step every time I see the ball is on the opponent's paddle. Do you think that will work? Or if
Yeah,
you watch a real like in-person game?
yeah, you could do that. You could, yeah, you can train it in any way. Like if it's a brand new skill for you, you might want to do it without a ball and just get the idea of like hopping and then move and do a shadow swing, then recover, do a little hop for your split step and move left or right, shadow a ground stroke or shadow a volley or something. Um, you can train it any way that makes sense for you. So the way that you described, that would be fine because at least you're watching the stimulus of the ball arriving to your opponents and then about to be struck. So you can work on timing your little split step hop by watching a video. You can do it on your own without a ball or a partner. Just get used to split and move, split and move. And then you should also train it. You could train it with a ball machine. The thing with the ball machine that's tough is you don't see a paddle coming towards the ball to make contact, and you don't see a ball arriving on a paddle, that's the stimulus you need to be watching to know when to split step. And that's why ball machine training, it's good. Don't get me wrong. They can be good for technical repetition, but I see players training on ball machines often, and the quality of what they're doing is just there is a low level of quality and it's unrealistic. And they're actually often developing bad habits or not implementing good habits. The other way you train is just do it with a partner. Go stand at the non-volley zone, have your partner at the baseline, either driving or dropping, and just do a little split step every time they're about to contact the ball. You could do it on a return of serve, have a friend send a bunch of serves to you. Maybe they have a basket of balls and you do a little split step every time they make contact with the ball to improve your reaction and movement to get set up for your return of serve. So that you can train it any way you want, but it's a really good habit to get into if you can get into it, right? Again, these are skills that need to be trained. They don't happen overnight, but it is a beneficial tool, especially at a higher level where the ball is often going much faster. A split step can be really useful.
Yeah, I think it based on different ball machines. And there's one ball machine I was practicing with, and I can see the ball feed to the hole.
Mhm.
And then, so if I set up a different direction setting, and I actually don't know where the ball gonna send to the direction, so I will more focus on really eye on the hole and to look at where the kind of the machine, the angle is, and kind of
Yeah.
anticipate where the ball gonna go.
If you can do that, you should. Again, like practicing a split step, it forces you to watch what's happening at contact so that you know when to time your split step. So anticipation skills really improve when you start adding a split step to your game if you haven't already, because then you start to pick up on the vertical angle of the paddle face of your opponent, the horizontal angle, which influences direction. You start to observe the speed of the swing and the size of the swing as you're preparing to do your split step. So ideally, yeah, the ideal way is to do it in a controlled setting, but then to do it with a partner so that you're really working on watching the ball arrive on your partner's paddle so that you can improve your anticipation and perfect the timing of when to do the split step so that you can perfect the timing of the landing so that you can move in a particular direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have been teaching so many students, coaching like so many coaches, and like especially as adults, well, coming from different mobility background, and like ideally we can all move, uh, uh, train ourselves to be at the right place at the right time. But it is challenging for different people, has some different mobility issue. And
Mhm.
for people like that, player like that, like would you offer some kind of some tips and they can do based on their own capability?
Yeah, and that's a good point. So I don't coach the split step super frequently unless it really seems to be needed. So, a lot of times with students, like it's more about just are they reacting and reading the ball well? So getting them to work on their ball judgment skills and just raising their awareness or challenging them to set up and set up on time. And then we define what on time means. And then if it's like, okay, they're really struggling to move, even when they kind of read the ball quickly, then maybe I would introduce the split step. But yeah, training the split step for some players would be highly advanced, and it takes a lot of practice to make it a habit. So a coach's challenge is always determining what's most important to that player that's in front of you at that time, and that can vary from student to student. If I was working with a really high level player who, was starting to perceive the ball well, but they were always just like maybe or often a little bit late when they were being attacked or they're a little late getting set up. If I noticed they didn't have a split step, at that point, I would absolutely introduce the split step for a high level, maybe younger athletic player, because I know it will really improve their movement skills, their reaction, and their anticipation skills. But for some players, it may not be the most important skill, right? And that's what a coach's job, one of the coach's job is to determine what is most important here, what is having the biggest impact on like what is their biggest limiting factor, and also what's the easiest thing I could introduce that would bring the most level of improvement. So yeah, when it comes to the split step, it's up to the coach's discretion, I guess, if they think that would be of value, and also how easy would it be for that student to actually practice it and maintain it on their own. Because sometimes you practice things and they don't get maintained. So you have to be selective about what skills you decide to train, and how easy are they to train and how big an impact will they have on a student's game.
Yeah, I think that's the one of the like big takeaway of our episodes today and last time is don't like listeners out there, don't worry, don't get over anxious about like you need to do all these things. And we start from have our footwork and movement to be prepared for the ball, to anticipate where the ball gonna go. We want to be there before the ball arrives. Is that right?
Yeah, like exactly. We've talked about a lot of things on this podcast, and it's interesting to talk about these things. Ultimately, what skills are most important to train for a certain player? It's totally an individual thing, right?
Yeah.
But hopefully these topics give people insight into potentially some things that they could add on to their game or improve, or develop just good training habits. But yeah, in a general sense, if you want to sort of summarize everything we've talked about, is be energetic. So like move with energy, feel athletic out there and feel like an athlete as much as you can as an individual. Always try to feel like you have an athletic ready position. So knees bent, feet a little wider than shoulder width, and always feel ready to move. And if you feel that way, you're probably going to be a good mover. And then just have the idea of beating the ball to the spot. So whether it's a ground stroke or a volley, like try to be ready before the ball crosses the net on a volley. And at the latest, try to be in position for ground strokes, or any shot that bounces before you hit it. Try to be ready and in position before the ball bounces. Make your shot and then recover. Okay. So the recovery is a huge one. So move to the ball as fast as you can or as early as you can, make your shot, and make sure you always have a quick and smart recovery.
Oh, love it. And move and be ready. Or be
Yeah,
ready
so
to move.
actually, so I think we might be running out of time, but a friend of ours, Corey Osborne, who's a high-level player and coach, he actually just introduced a name for his coaching business called RAW, RAW,
Yeah.
and it's an acronym for Ready and Waiting, and it relates totally to what we're talking about. So he uses that phrase a lot in his coaching. I know because I've coached with him a couple of times, and he basically ready and waiting means recover so that you're ready and waiting for the next shot. If you don't recover well, you
Yeah.
won't have time to wait. But if you recover really quickly after each shot, chances are you're ready and you'll be almost waiting for the opponent to hit the ball. And that's a great thing, right? Because
Yeah.
if you're waiting, it means you have time. And if you have time, it's easy to execute a shot.
Exactly. Hi, Corey. If you're there, you're getting a free ad.
Yeah,
Wait,
shout out to
I
Corey.
don't know. Should we charge him for that?
He doesn't need it. He's in high demand already.
Oh, it's too bad we're running out of time. And that's great. It's a great chat. And I love to continue to talk about the foot more. And yeah, we can definitely talk more in the next episode. And meanwhile, listeners out there, please don't forget to subscribe and also click the like buttons. Yeah, we'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much, Jeff, for another very informative, interesting episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Lily. We'll see you again soon.
Definitely. Thank you. Bye bye.